What's going on, fam, and a huge welcome to the channel. Really excited to be dropping some insights and knowledge into that cranium of yours. For this week's video, we're going to be covering the difference between fat loss and weight loss, but more essentially in terms of the name of this video, it is fast versus slow weight loss. So in this video, I'm going to basically break down for you the difference between how fat loss works and weight loss works so that you can understand the difference. Because for some people, they say they want to lose weight and tone up, but then they think that all it is just losing weight and the number on the scale is everything. But truth be told, it's not. It's just a gauge of progress. So we're going to be dropping some insights into that. And I'm going to be sharing with you the huge difference between, well, fast versus slow weight loss so you can understand kind of a better way to approach it and just the science behind it, all right? So do me a favor, if you're new to the channel, please, hey, let us know in the comments below how your journey is going. Would love to hear, and obviously, well, yeah, sharing a bit of yours and provide some extra value. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, give this video a like, and as you are kind of going through it with me, if you have any questions, let us know, so that way I can make sure that you're on point with all the stuff that I'm teaching here. Because, yeah, part of why I do these videos and stuff like that, obviously, yes, I do some cool eating-based ones and random shit from time to time, but part of the reason why I do these knowledge-based videos is just that I can help you understand how simple and fun and sustainable this journey can be. Because I'm someone who has been, you know, a dieter and struggling with my weight since the age of, I think I was like 13 or 14. Like, I started my first diet when I was in year 8, you know, towards the end of year 8. Like, that is how long I've been in the game for. So yeah, like, trust me, I know a thing or two. And obviously now, fast forward to where I am now, I've competed in a whole heap of different competitions in terms of bodybuilding. I've done many photo shoots. I coach men and women all around the world with this stuff to be able to master their relationships with food and just become lean, healthy, happy, amazing humans without the restraints of conventional dieting and restrictive bullshit, okay? So yeah, it's a bit about me. Now it's time to jump into the content. Let's get stuck into this video. So fam, I've got my iPad a piece here. I'm just about to click record so I can show you guys my screen, because for those of you who are visual learners like me, it's obviously very effective and fun to be able to have something to look at, to be able to help the knowledge sink in, right? So you'll see here a lovely graph, yay! Over here we have weight in terms of kilos, and over here we have time frame in terms of weeks, right? So initially what we're going to be covering here is kind of like the difference between how weight loss and fat loss works. So I'm going to do here in blue the first thing, and this is basically going to give you insight into how a typical weight loss scenario will look, right? So let's say, like, you know, it doesn't really matter what you start out, but usually what will happen is that it will kind of go like this, depending on how long your journey goes for. But this is basically what it will look like, right? You're obviously not going to go down to sub 50, but you see what I mean? So as you can see here, right, with when it comes to weight loss, right, one of the biggest things that you will notice is fluctuations, right? Now, in terms of your actual weight, be aware that, like, there's many things that make up your entire body. Like, you've got skeletal mass, you've got organs, you've got all your blood, you've got the food that you haven't yet digested, you've got water, and then you've got lifestyle related factors that will influence that, meaning that you can be weighing different amounts of weight at any time in the day, right? And for a lot of people, what happens is that they weigh themselves maybe once a week, if that. And the thing is that, like, if you only weigh yourself once a week, this pretty much means nothing, because what you'll find is that, well, yeah, because there's so much stuff that influences what you weigh, it's just dumb to kind of like just be investing your heart and soul into the number that the scale reads when all you've done is just weigh yourself once, right? So obviously, yes, when it comes to weight loss, like, what you got to kind of realize is that it's exactly that, weight, right? And if you say, for example, the scenario for you is that you undereat massively, right? And that you don't really do any weightlifting, so I'll put here no lifting, or if you do, you kind of maybe do like really high rep, low exertion in terms of actual weight and stuff like that, like you're kind of just doing cardio really. If that's the scenario for you, well, what's probably going to happen here is that when you are losing weight, right, you will basically be losing quite a lot of muscle, right? Yes, you'll lose a bit of fat, you'll lose some water. So basically what will happen is that you might be able to hit your goal weight, but the thing is, in terms of your looks, you're probably going to look skinny fat. This is what you're probably going to notice, right? and my hand goes up for this as well because I made this mistake in the past before. I was grinding hard to hit a goal weight, and basically, yeah, I did this stuff that you just saw just here. I was under eating. I, used a calorie calculator online. I found out what my calories were. I was like sick, and I would just eat half of that in favor of trying to be able to, lose weight quicker and stuff. And like, yeah, I lost weight quick, but what you're gonna learn soon is that, yeah, some shit repercussions came of that, right? So this is kind of how weight loss works. It's kind of like, well, you don't really get to control how you look. Like, yeah, you can hit a goal weight, but what you'll find is that like two people can be the same weight and look entirely different, and that's because of their body composition. So the difference between like sort of what's going on here, right? So the blue equals fat loss. Let's say that the red equals weight loss now, all right? So what's going to happen is that when you are in like just looking at the fat loss sort of scenario, right? What's going to happen is it will probably look like this. That's what it's probably going to look like, right? Because what happens with fat loss, right, is that essentially what's happening, so this is the weight loss scenario, over here is the fat loss scenario with fat loss, right? What's happening here is that you are taking into account your weight fluctuations, but what might happen is that you might weigh yourself multiple times during the week, right? Let's say, for example, that you're doing it maybe about 3 to 5 times per week, right? And then what's happening is that you might get, say, for example, so it's like you weigh yourself that period of time for during the week, you add up all your weigh-ins and you divide it by the amount of times that you did, and then what happens is that you get an average, right? And then what you do is that with that average you compare it over anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks to be able to see how you're trending. And what will usually happen in terms of how you're trending, you'll see here, is that yeah, you've got all these minor fucking fluctuations during the week, right? But what's happening is that you are trending down, right? And then what's going to happen, you'll find, is that you'll have these sort of little bumps where your weight is maintaining for 1 to 2 weeks, right? And that's totally cool because that happens. Like, not even fat loss can be 100% linear, or it's quite hard to be able to achieve that. So this might be where you, like, because what you can remember is that your metabolism is kind of reducing down naturally as you get leaner. Even if you're doing all things right, it can't stay the same, like, and just stay really high ongoing. Like, you can do things to keep it going strong, but it's still going to gradually reduce. And if you don't know about metabolism, feel free to check out last week's video. You can learn all about the metabolism, how it works, and some cool myth busting around that I did in last week's video. But basically what will happen here is it's like your fat loss won't look entirely linear, but you can see here that it's still a downward trend. And you might have, say for example, 1 to 2 weeks where your weight is the same, or it might have gone up a little bit. And if that's the case, hey, no stress. Like, you haven't gained any fat. It's just that your metabolism is adapting to your efforts. So what you might do here is this is where you might have, say for example, a diet break. Same with this as well. If you don't know what diet breaks are, I've done a video recently. It's in my uploads. Go check that out. But you might have a diet break, or you might just do a calorie drop by maybe like 50 to 100 calories or something like that, right? And then what you'll usually find is that your fat loss results will actually start trending down, right? Now, in terms of the big difference between obviously these two, essentially what's happening is that when you're focusing on fat loss, right, all you're losing is fat tissue, right? So in terms of the difference there, like when you're only losing fat, what's happening there is that because you're nailing the lifestyle factors right and you're eating enough and that sort of thing, what's going to happen is that you're going to maintain muscle, right? So the thing here to note is that when you're maintaining muscle and all that you're losing is fat, this is where you will appear #toned, right? Or you will be, depending on how long you go along for, you'll be #shredded, right? Like old mate Mr. Angus Beef there, you'll see in the back. Like, these are some pics from one of my photo shoots that I did, and believe it or not, like, to look that good, all I did was basically eat at maintenance for a period of time. And yeah, like, my trending in terms of results basically looked really similar to this. My weight fluctuated ridiculously all the time, right? But in terms of overall trend, I gradually trended down, and that's how fat loss works. Like, you're not getting emotionally invested into these sort of shifts in the day-to-day, right, with your weight, right? What you are looking at is just how you're trending over time, right? So typically when I'm training clients, we don't really kind of care exactly what their weight's doing, but we're comparing it from a, what's trending point of view, right? And as you can see here, like, yeah, you can get shredded over time, but what happens is that you're really able to control your aesthetics well when your focus is fat loss, right? And what's going to naturally happen is that because you've done it right, it will also be, running in a room there, what's going to also happen is that it will be easier to maintain how lean you get, because you didn't dive so deeply into a deficit, right? You are able to naturally, because you've kept your metabolism and hormonal functions operating pretty well, your transition into maintenance is going to be quite easy, and you're going to have quite a high maintenance intake to be able to stay relatively lean ongoing, because you didn't essentially shaft your metabolism from the restriction point of view. All right. So as you can see there, quite a big difference between how weight loss versus fat loss works. Please, if you have any questions around this, drop it in the comments below. Otherwise, now what we're going to do in terms of the next part is we're going to look at the difference between fast versus slow results and what you should be focusing on around that side of things. Now, bam, we are back to an empty graph, because now it's time to compare the difference between fast and slow weight loss, right? So in terms of like the whole, we're going to use similar colors. We're going to go green in terms of the faster scenario, right? So the birth of the faster scenario came from when you've started, like you probably noticed it as well, just the uprise of these short-term shreds, and obviously with the whole dieting mentality is to be able to lose weight fast, right? So what will typically happen is that, and like this is where keto sort of capitalized as well, like keto's been around since the 1920s, right? But obviously it's become trending based on people wanting to be able to drop weight quicker, and yeah, like for some reason they expect to be able to maintain their weight really easy, right? So let's say that what happens in terms of like, because we've got the time frame along here, so typically what happens is that it's quite, let's say that you might be starting around here, and your weights in terms of like let's zoom in a bit, because what it's going to look like is something like this. You'll usually find, right, that you'll get some mad shreds, and you go like this, and it's going down, but you usually at about this mark in terms of like where people will be able to keep it up. Because obviously keep in mind that when you're dieting in any form, like even the sort of stuff that I teach in terms of flexible dieting and making sure that things are as easy to maintain as possible in terms of like sticking to the stuff that you're trying to do to give your body a reason to lose fat, what you've got to realize, right, is that when you're dieting, no matter what sort of means it is, like your body perceives it as if you are on a self-destructive path. So you've got to realize that it will do everything in its power to try and fuck with you depending on the level of restriction you're putting it through. So obviously because someone is dieting here in terms of fast weight loss, what they're usually doing is they're under eating massively, and they might be over exercising in terms of like just doing a shitload of activity based on the shred that they're doing and that sort of thing, right? And then what will usually happen, because they've done some significant, like obviously in the scenario someone's lost 50 kgs in 6 weeks, that's not going to happen. I kind of fucked up the thing there, but either way, like it's like a steep decline in terms of weight, right? And then what will happen, right, is that just as quickly as you lost weight, you're probably going to find that almost twice as fast you will gain it right back and be higher than what you started, right? Now the reason why this is because I want you to kind of take note of this, right? The faster you rush or lose, equals the sooner that you regain it back. Which kind of sucks, because it's like, obviously, well, yeah, you want results yesterday, and you know, obviously, yes, you grind hard with whatever shred you're doing, right? But the reason why you gain this weight back so quickly is because obviously what you did to get from here to here, right, is in no way enjoyable, right? It is in no way sustainable. And what you'll find is that it's usually RIP to your soul, meaning that because that's the case and your body is picking up on the restriction and the stress that you're putting it through and that sort of thing, right, what happens is that at this point here, or it's kind of been happening at these points here, but usually at this point here, what will happen is that your body will fuck with your leptin levels, and it probably has leading up to that, but it will fuck with it here most, right? And as a result of that, it will fuck your appetite as well to make you ridiculously hungry, and it will play with your cravings to make you hardcore crave what's known as hyperpalatable foods, right? AKA just basically energy dense stuff that tastes awesome. And then with that happening, right, because you have restricted your food so much, and obviously you've been cutting out so much stuff, and that stuff now is so irresistibly like attractive to you, you just want to eat it all, and therefore So this also happens, believe it or not, quite commonly with people who are bikini competitors or people who have kind of like done like a 12 or 16 week prep, but they've just dieted ridiculously hard and they have had no post-comp strategy. So this is where here is what's also known as the post comp blues. I actually had that after my very first time competing because I didn't yet at that stage know about flexible dieting or anything around calories and stuff like that. But for the average Joe, this happens time and time again. And then because what happens is that they aren't quite aware of the science of why this happens, because they jump from diet to diet, what kind of happens is that this cycle, right, repeats itself and they create a loop, right? A loop of diet fuckery, right? And then what's happening is that every time that you do one of these sort of diet fuckery scenarios, right, your metabolic rate continues to drop, you will probably gradually lose more muscle. And then what happens is that because you've gone through that sort of scenario that much time, so this is what happens quite frequently when I'm working with people, we need to kind of focus on reverse dieting slash restoration work first, before we can even start focusing on fat loss, because everything's so down regulated and then the body's adapted to these sort of shitty cycles, or a long-term approach of just such restrictive calorie deprivation, right? You've got to kind of do some, like, you know, rather than just putting a band-aid on things, right, to try and fix things, you kind of need to really fix up with the stitches to kind of permanently heal things to then be able to successfully focus on fat loss. So as you can see there, fast weight loss, yes, you can hit your kind of, you know, you might be approaching stuff like this for a comp because you've got a short deadline, or it might be for like a wedding or something like that. But more often than not, you can see there that fast weight loss equals shit, right? In other words, quick fix based stuff, kind of see it as if like run to the hills, because it's never going to serve you well. And sure, it might mean that you don't hit your goal weight quicker and that sort of thing, but hey, what we're going to look at now is the slower sort of scenario, but why it's going to be more beneficial for you. All right. So fam, we've got a new blank slate, and here we're going to be talking about now the slower, more sustained version. Alright, so we're going to be working with our boy, oh yeah, it's got yellow this time. So basically what's happened, like, if you are approaching it in a more of a slower, more sustained manner, basically what's going to happen here is, actually I'll do some stats first. So when people are going, like, let's say for example, fast, slow. So let's say for example here, when you're team fast, what will usually happen is that you might be able to drop, like, obviously if you're very overweight when you're starting, if you put yourself into any sort of a deficit, you will probably quite easily drop fat, and you'll be able to lose some pretty significant amounts of weight. Also, for example, when you are used to eating heaps of carbs and then you go keto, for example, you're going to drop some water weight hard quite quickly, and then obviously as the body evens out, that will reduce. But typically when it's sort of fast scenario, people will be aiming for 1 to 2 kgs per week. And then when it's no longer at that sort of stage, they will get discouraged, and this is usually what's a big contributor to wanting to continue with the diet, is because, well, they're not able to like continue to lose the amount that they are, and therefore they usually grind deeper into a deficit, and then it becomes harder to maintain, and this is when they're going to have their big rebound, right? As we saw from the previous slide, right? Now with the slow scenario, right, what I always encourage is 0.5% of body weight per week, because this is quite realistic. Because let's say for example that you weigh 100 kgs, right? Obviously then 10% would be 1% would be 1 kilo, so therefore 5%, so 0.5 would be 500 grams, right? So 500 grams per week on average is fucking solid. And then what naturally happens is that as your body adapts, in terms of just like, well, naturally, even if you do things very, very well, your metabolism and your overall TDE, so your total daily energy expenditure, is going to gradually drop, and therefore your deficit will slowly need to drop as well. So as that happens, well then naturally kind of the scenario is that like your overall weight that you will drop per week will gradually reduce as well, to the point where you might be only doing 1 to 200 grams per week because you're really lean. And even in that sort of case, that's still pretty good too, right? So now for the graph scenario, right? So what this is probably going to usually look like, you'll find, is that, so we'll speak like, you know, as we saw earlier, fat loss versus weight loss, but we'll pretend that you're smart, that you're aiming for fat loss, right? What's going to happen is that let's say that you're sitting at about here. So you can see here that our time frame goes up to 26 weeks, right? Now, ideally, you're not going to be, like it depends on your starting weight. Like if you're, say for example, aiming for 0.5% of body weight, you do the math there. If you're losing half a kilo per week, right, and you start at 100 and you want to get down to 80, for example, you've got 20 kgs to lose. So therefore, because you've got 20 kgs to lose and you want to average 500 grams, it's going to take you about 40 weeks, right? So it's kind of like when you can kind of look at it from that point of view, best case scenario, this is where you can then work your way backwards and then plan refeeds and diet breaks and stuff like that. So obviously if someone's got that amount of weight to lose, let's say for example you start at 100, what's probably going to look like is that you will trend like this, and you've gotten down to 100, so you've lost that amount of kgs in 10 weeks. And then what's going to happen is that as your body adapts, it might kind of go like this and level out, but then it will kind of look like this, then it will level out, and then it will look like this, right? So not probably like that, it's probably going to be more like this, and then more like this, and then so it's like you're gradually getting there, but as you can see, it's sustained, right? And sure, it's like it's not the most exciting thing in the world to know that you're only going to lose 500 grams per week, and therefore if you've got 20 kgs to lose it, it's going to take 40 weeks. But it's like, well, what's the scenario? Like, do you want to be consistently stuck in this sort of, you know, rebound, regain sort of scenario and consistently having to jump from one diet to the other? Or do you want to permanently, like once you've lost the weight, to permanently keep it off? I don't know about you, but it makes more sense to approach it in this sort of sustained manner, right? Because the thing is that if you've done fat loss properly, what's going to happen is that the bulk of the fat that you've lost, you're never going to see again, right? Because what's going to go on, right? Never going to see again. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to achieve, like obviously you're going to lose significant amounts of fat, and you're going to get to a body image that you're really happy with, and then obviously that will reflect in a certain weight. And then what's going to happen is that as a result of that, you will achieve what's called a weight set point, meaning that you could quite easily eat intuitively from that point, in terms of like obviously you've gone through a decent length of time of tracking macros and calories and having refeeds, diet breaks and stuff like that, right? It's not going to really be too hard for you now to be able to, based on what you know about what's in food and stuff like that, to be able to make eating choices without thinking about it too much and just listening to your body. You'll find that your set point in terms of your weight won't actually change in surplus of about 3 kgs. So in other words, it's not going to shift much below your weight by about 3 kilos, and it's probably not going to shift at all above 3 kilos either. Or it might be 3 to 5, let's say, you know, realistically, right? Because everyone's got different sort of external factors. So when that's the case, like this can only be achieved from playing the fat loss game properly. And then what happens is that when you're in maintenance, right, what's actually pretty cool is that like when you're in a deficit, right, it's quite difficult to be able to consistently gain strength, let alone build any sort of muscle, because you're eating below maintenance intake. Whereas if you can be making performance gains, right, and you've been really good with your fat loss prior, your body has become conditioned to utilizing calories well, and because it's got effective what's called calorie partitioning, right? If you don't know what this is, let me know in the comments below, right? Calorie partitioning. What that then means is that when you come to maintenance, right, your body's going to eat up those calories, especially if you're making new gains in your training. And then what's going to happen here is that you'll be able to stay lean while isolating muscle gain. And this is what I like to do for decent periods of time, right? Because it's just awesome, because that allows you to be able to consistently, gradually over time, raise your TDE. And then it means that if and when you decide to cut again, you're going to have a much higher starting point of your intake as opposed to what you might have done previously. And that's just the benefit of approaching fat loss in a sustained manner. Like, yeah, it might take you an extended period of time, right? But the thing is, so let's put here extended period of time. But the thing here is that if you do it in comparison, right? Like people endlessly diet for what's called career dieters, right? And I used to be someone who did this as well, where it's like you're endlessly jumping from diet to diet over massive lengths of time in terms of like, well, for a lot of people, they start dieting in their late teens, and then because they never truly get the hang of things and they jump from diet to diet, they might be dieting on and off from the age of 18 or maybe even earlier like me, right the way through to when they're like in their 30s/40s, right? And then they'll end up just likely accepting where they are, in terms of just like never really having a good body, and then write themselves off as a lost cause, right? This happens so often because at the moment, 1 out of 3 kids are struggling with their weight, and 2 out of 3 adults are struggling also, and usually have signs of eating disorders, right? Because the thing is that when you are just kind of like approaching this journey with restriction sort of paradigm and stuff, obviously it's like you're building shitty self outlooks and beliefs around food and yourself. Whereas here, what's happening is that, yeah, it's a slower approach, but it's like for this reason here, this is why when I work with clients and stuff like that, it's usually for at least a year, ideally up to 2 years in terms of why I work with them, because once you've successfully lost all this fat, you'll find that you'll want to isolate some muscle gain to be able to kind of chisel away at building even better aesthetics, and then actually learning new sort of techniques around how to see food without having to track, so it takes some time. And then the benefit is obviously is that, well, by doing it this way, you're more than likely to be free in terms of from the system, from the dieting sort of mentalities, from all that sort of stuff that was holding you back before in terms of like a ball and chain, right? You're now free of that and are more set up to be able to, you know, kind of like, well, stay as the new version of you. So this is what we call an identity shift, right? Where it's like everything is stuck, you've now built all these great new habits and outlook on life and as food, and therefore it's a lot easier to maintain. So you can see there's a big difference between fast and slow. Obviously they both have their pros and cons, but naturally it kind of comes down to the context of your goals, the timeline that you have to work with, and what's most important to you. Is it hitting a goal weight in a certain time, or is it looking a certain way and getting there and staying there forever? You kind of need to ask yourself what's more important. There we go, fam. Really hope you got some value from this epic content video. Today's focus was on all things weight loss versus fat loss and the difference between fast versus slow results. So hopefully what that's done is it's given you some really good perspective in terms of how to be approaching your goals, but also just some deeper knowledge in terms of just like, well, how the body works in those parameters and how you can be making the game work for you. So do me a favor, if you're new to the channel, what I'd love for you to do is just let me know what was valuable. Comment below, would love to hear. If you have any questions, let me know as well, because for a lot of people who are conventional dieters or who are just going solo in this game, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of doubt, and therefore when that happens, it makes the journey very hard, and this is why a lot of people just bail or they write themselves off as lost causes, right? So yeah, and obviously if you're new to the channel as well, if I were you, I'd subscribe, because then you can be checking out all sorts of free content from myself that's going to be helping you in your journey. And obviously if you're a returning subscriber, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Drop some love, share it with someone who you think could benefit from it, because hey, let's face it, so many people in society have no idea what they're doing when it comes to losing fat properly, getting healthy properly, all this sort of stuff. It's all just conventional restrictive bullshit in terms of what people are putting themselves through. So if you have any questions around this, let us know. Obviously if you're keen for some more individualized help, consider coaching. Check out my store link below and you can check out some more free and low cost options, as well as what coaching is all about. As I said earlier on, this is something that I do as a career. I coach men and women across the world how to be able to master their relationships with food, how to be able to, you know, get lean and healthy without conventional dieting BS, and just setting themselves free from the system. Because yeah, you've got things like the National Dietary Guidelines and stuff like that that can help you to be able to kind of get the basics down packed. But ultimately, if you're looking to be able to craft an ongoing lifestyle from this stuff and kind of no longer have to stress and think about food and be self-conscious and just like you just want to get your shit sorted, this is where coaching can be very effective, and where I have free calls with people where obviously if you check out the link, you can book yourself in for a call with me. We can see if and how I can help you, and if you feel that you're a good match for me, and vice versa. Because obviously I'm selective with who I take on, because it's a means of, well, you know, if I'm going to guarantee their results and if I'm going to work with them for 1 to 2 years, I want to make sure without a shadow of a doubt that I can get them to where they want to be and that they have an awesome time in terms of just their coaching experience with me. But yeah, and obviously if you're keen to follow me on my journey and see my day to day and just see this shit modeled and just more of what I'm like, check this picture here. You can see that there's you know, a direct insight to my Insta. I've got a personal Insta, a business Insta, and then I've got my Facebook as well. So heaps of ways to be able to sharing in my journey outside of just my YouTube videos. But once again, big love. Thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And yeah, see you next time in the YouTube world. Peace out.